All right, everybody. Happy Friday. Late morning now. And I think it's time we talked about this for a little bit. I know this is kind of sort of similar to what we do during the routing guide stuff every week, but we're getting to the point where every little bit matters a lot. So I think spending a little bit of an extra time talking about this stuff is not a bad thing. So let's talk about the ramifications of last night's devastating game. Devastating, not just for the Seahawks. I mean, this game hurt. This game hurts the Seahawks. There's no way around it. Devastating to them, but also devastating to Brock Purdy's future contract extension. Devastating to Kyle Shanahan's reputation. Devastating to the decision to fire Steve Wilkes last offseason. I don't know. They only allowed 12 points, I guess. I guess it wasn't that bad, but it was a devastating game, devastating for the entertainment level of the people watching at home. 60 minutes, 0 touchdowns scored, total of 302 passing yards. Actually, a little bit less if you take out sack yards. But it was a very ugly, very bad game, and we didn't get the result that we wanted. And this game, combined with last week's Bills disaster class, with them giving up, 44 points to the Rams offense. I guess 7 of it was on a blocked punt. But it puts us in this position now where there's a pretty icky scenario that may play out over the next 4 weeks. So I'm not going to talk too much about this specific game. You guys probably watched it. If you didn't, you get the picture. The weather was bad. Neither team could move the ball in the first half effectively. Second half, the Rams got better as the weather got better, and they were able to actually put together some fourth quarter drives. And the Niners, on the back of Brock Purdy's embarrassing high school level arm, couldn't get it going. And I mean, the bright side is, the silver lining, I guess, is that the Niners season is done. They're flushed. They could win out now, and I still don't think it's going to matter. So that's cool, I guess. I don't even know if we want them. I don't even know what we want them to do now. You could argue we want them to win out now just to hurt the pick. But I don't need to talk too much about this game, but I got to talk about where we stand right now in the playoff picture. And I'm going to do something that I haven't done yet this year. I'm going to play with the ESPN Playoff Machine. This is a cool little tool. Check it out yourself if you want to. That allows you to come up with the playoff scenario based on picking games. So what I have done here is constructed the next month of football boilerplate. I have gone very, very boilerplate with pretty much every pick. And I wanted to see where things landed. And boilerplate doesn't necessarily mean I picked only favorites. But what I'm trying to say is, I picked the things that I thought would happen. And just to see where things landed, you can see what the NFC playoff picture is. It's above my head. Detroit, top seed. Philadelphia, Seattle, third seed. Atlanta, fourth seed. Minnesota is the fifth seed. Green Bay, and then Tampa Bay. So that would be a pretty good playoff scenario for Seahawks fans. They would be happy with the third seed. They'd be happy playing Green Bay. But let's see how we got here and understand how delicate this is. So I have the Seahawks at 11-6, which means I have them beating Green Bay. I have them losing to Minnesota. I have them beating the Bears. And then I have them beating the Rams. Here's the potential issue. If I flip this upcoming game, Seattle versus Green Bay, and I give it to Green Bay, then I have taken Seattle out of the playoffs, and the Rams win the division, even though I have Seattle winning in Week 18. So you see how quickly this slips away. I just came up with a scenario where the Seahawks get to 10 wins, they're 10-7, and they beat the Rams in the final week of the season, but they still don't get in just on the back of them losing to two good teams coming up, Green Bay and Minnesota. Now, if I flip the Minnesota result instead of the Green Bay result, then you can see it reverts back to what it was. But the point I'm trying to make here, this is setting up for a realistic outcome where the Seahawks get 10 wins and still miss the playoffs, which is incredibly unlucky in a world where you have 7 playoff berths per conference. In the current playoff setup, 10 wins should reliably get you in. So if this happens, we definitely got the short end of the luck stick. Don't get me wrong. But that doesn't change the fact that it could happen, and it's a pretty icky, pretty terrifying scenario. So let's take a look at what else built this particular situation. Looking at the Rams, what I have the Rams doing over their next few weeks. We got them beating the Jets. I think it would be reasonable to say that that Jets game is a layup at this point. It's a talented Jets team, but it's been so long since they've won a game. I think just sitting there and holding out hope that they find a way to finally put it together now that it doesn't matter at all is probably not a good use of our time. So we go to week 17, and we do have this Cardinals versus Rams matchup, where if I flip this result from the Rams, I currently have the Rams winning. Let's say the Cardinals win, then we go back to the previous setup, where you have Seattle with 10 wins, winning the division, getting the 3rd seed over Atlanta because of the tiebreaker, and we're happy. We're happy. We're playing a Green Bay team that, hey, we're not guaranteed to beat Green Bay in a postseason game, but that's a matchup I'm willing to live with. And if we lose that game, I'm willing to live with that. Like, at the end of the day, you're going to play good teams in the playoffs. So I don't feel the need to run away from potentially intimidating matchups. But in order for that to happen, you would need the Rams to lose to the Cardinals. Who knows what the Cardinals are going to have to play for by the time we get to this game? Because the Cardinals coming up, they do have the Patriots. They should beat them. And then they have the Panthers. They should beat them. So that would mean that technically Arizona will still be alive at this point in time. But they may also see the writing on the wall and realize the odds are not in their favor. And then they get Frisco the last week of the season. So they could be looking at that and thinking, okay, we can win that game. We can get to, our 10 wins. Then they would be the 10-win team that gets left out in the cold. So kind of feels like whatever happens, there's going to be a 10-win team that just gets left out in the cold because the NFC North was so good. So let's flip that back. Let's say the Rams beat the Cardinals in week 17. This is now the scenario where the Rams win the division and the Seahawks are left out even though they won 10 games. If the Seahawks win 11 games, by the way, I think it's basically impossible for them to miss. Or it would take one diabolical scenario to cook up anything there. Then the key keeper is going to be Tampa Bay in the 7 seed. As you can see, Tampa Bay gets the 7 seed in this situation, in this scenario. Tampa Bay with 10 wins. Seattle with 10 wins. Washington with 10 wins. Tampa Bay wins that 3-way tiebreaker, it looks like. So let's take a look at what I have Tampa Bay doing over their last 4 games. I have them losing to the Chargers. So they're losing that one. I have Tampa Bay beating the Cowboys. I think that's probably the most reasonable expectation at this point, given where the Cowboys are. Don't count them out, but don't count them in either. I have them beating Carolina, which is interesting. Let's come back to that in a second here. And then the final week of the season, I have Tampa Bay beating the Saints. And the Saints at this point, who knows what they're going to have at quarterback. Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler, the corpse of Derek Carr. I wouldn't expect them to win any more games the rest of the year. So, nevertheless, let's flip some switches here. Let's say Tampa Bay loses to Dallas. Well, they're out now, but guess who moves in? Washington. Let's flip that back real quick here. Let's go to week 17, say they lose to Carolina. Washington moves in over Tampa. So, week 18, one last opportunity? No. Seattle still doesn't get in. Washington wins the head-to-head tiebreaker at 10 wins with Seattle at 10 wins. So if you want to open up that back door to the 7 seed, you need Tampa Bay to lose one game. Let's say they lose to Dallas, because Dallas has actually been playing decent football lately. Let's say Dallas wins. Now you need to find one loss for Washington. And let's see what I have Washington doing right now. I have them beating the Saints, which again I think is the most likely outcome, given where the Saints are right now. I have them losing to the Eagles, so I already have them losing that game. I'm sure they will lose that game as long as Philly needs it. I have them losing to Atlanta, which is not a guarantee at all. But I already have them losing to the Falcons, who have gone winless for a pretty decent amount of time here. And then week 18, I have Washington beating the Cowboys. So where is the surprise loss that throws Washington out of the 7th seed in this scenario? Well, honestly, it can probably only come in week 18 against the Cowboys, because the Cowboys have already beaten Washington once this year. Washington is not playing great football lately. It's possible. So in that case, you get your 7 seed Seattle Seahawks with 10 wins. You needed to get Tampa Bay out of the way, which will not be easy, and you needed to get Washington out of the way, which will not be easy, just to squeak in as a 7 seed to play this Philadelphia team that has been playing with their hair on fire for a couple of months now. So that is what it takes to sneak in through the back door. And as you can see, I think I'm being reasonable here. I think Washington is overrated, but they're good enough to win enough games to get to 10 wins. And Tampa Bay's wounded, but I think that they're good enough to probably get to 10 wins. I have to twist the scenario to get it to where I want it to go. So I don't know if you can play with any of the other games in order to get Seattle to win the 3-way tiebreaker. I don't believe that you can. Like, maybe you can twist around strength of schedule or head-to-head wins. Maybe you could flip a couple of seemingly unrelated results and get Seattle into the 7 seed that way. But this is probably what you're looking at. You need the Dallas Cowboys to finish the season very strongly. You need them to find a way to beat Tampa and Washington to end their season. And I'm not ruling it out. Dallas has played competitively since Dak Prescott got hurt somehow. But you're asking for a lot. And by the way, even in this scenario, you need to make sure you actually beat the Bears, which, okay, that should be a given at this point with the way the Bears are playing. And you have to beat the Rams in week 18 still, in LA, which is not easy. So, quite simply, there is now immense pressure on Seattle to go 3-1. That's what the cost of the last 2 Rams games is. And it's also the cost of things like losing to the Rams when you played them the first time, because you absolutely, positively should have won that game. It is the cost of losing a game to the Giants, a team that has no business beating anybody, and they went into Seattle and badly outplayed you. So that is the situation as I see it. That is how things look like they are going to play out. And Seattle can really only afford to lose one more game this year. And honestly, like, if you were to, let's flip everything back to the more boilerplate understanding of these playoffs. And then let's say we beat Green Bay. Let's say we beat Minnesota. And then beat the Bears, but then lose to the Rams. Well, I guess we could live with that, right? The 6th seed. We'd go to LA, who wins the division on tiebreaker because they sweep us. So I guess that would be the 3rd possible scenario here. Not excited to go back to LA right after losing to them in LA, but I'll take my playoff berth and I'll figure out the rest later. I'll take my 11-win season. I guess that's okay. I just want to get in the dance and see what happens. But you see how difficult it's going to be for this team to get in with 10 wins. We need some help, guys. We need some help. Arizona, we need you. Arizona, we need you guys in the worst way. And we don't need you so much that this happens and you win the division, but we need you. All right. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Let me know what you think down below.